Hi, welcome to the Drama Free Living Podcast. I'm super excited, Lisa. We're kind of continuing this idea of some different tips to help people manage their emotions and then step in and really help their team. And I think one thing that's kind of hitting me about this is that one thing really growing emotional intelligence helps you do is really manage your own stress.
Absolutely. And our whole point in this podcast is so you can refresh and re-energize your team. Now, you refresh and re-energize yourself also, but refresh and re-energize your team.
Yeah, because it's like, I think the thing you have to manage most is you have to manage your energy and manage your team's energy. Because even like when we think about time management, right? I mean, we can't really manage time, in my opinion, because you can't stop. If I could stop time, then I could totally manage time, right? But I can't control it. But this whole idea of emotional energy, I totally can control it. Right, I totally can increase it, and that's what it's about because we produce better results when we have high energy.
Absolutely.
And so how do we continue to do this? And one thing that really stops us is this whole idea of stress, right? Stress comes in and really not being able to adapt.
Right.
When I'm emotionally fragile, I'm not able to adapt in some of those things. So
absolutely. So Psychology Today had an interesting thing that they put out. It says EQ, or emotional intelligence, enhances communication skills, ensuring messages are conveyed effectively and conflicts are resolved amicably.
I mean, think about how many times we have to remessage and message again.
And
right?
then somebody takes it wrong, or there's not a clarity, or, well, did you mean this? Or, well, wait a minute, why did you mean that? Do you think I'm doing a bad job?
Well, and that's why we really created the intention clarifier.
Oh, right.
Right? Inside of the emotionally intelligent course and communication system, kind of the foundation is this intention clarifier, where really first you have to become clear first yourself.
Right.
I remember one time talking to a particular person just trying to get some advice. And after about 10 minutes, I'm talking and talking and talking. He looked at me like it wasn't clear. And he says, and I said, well, is it not clear to you? And he says, well, is it clear to you? And I was like, no, it's not at all. And many times, like, we go out and we try to communicate to our team members.
Right.
And it gets muddled because first it's muddled on the inside of us.
Absolutely. And along those lines, Psychology Today continued to say that in a world that values collaboration and innovation, emotional intelligence is a must-have skill, because that's the basis.
The foundation.
Right. I was just going to say that. It's the foundation of collaboration and innovation.
Okay, so watch this. If we don't have innovation and collaboration, right, there's probably something wrong emotionally, not logically.
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it really is the foundation.
So then we also talked about this in our podcast last week. Yep. And I gave this statistic, which I found was super fascinating and kind of telling. So if you're a manager, if you're a leader and this hits you, just take a couple deep breaths. I am so sorry. I'm going to apologize in advance. 70% of engagement variance is attributed to managers' behavior and emotional intelligence. That's from Gallup. So that wasn't from Lisa or Dennis. Yeah. So what that means is you've got your employees, and there's this variance of engagement that our employees have. Some teams are super engaged, and other teams are very disconnected, and some companies. And they're saying that it is not 70% hingent on the individual employee or the individual team member. Yeah. Gallup says from their studies that 70%, that engagement is 70% responsible from the manager, the leader, whoever's in charge. So if you have a company and you have a team within your company that is totally engaged, you need to go pat that manager on the back or that leader on the back, because highly likely it's them.
Yeah. So just remember, if that hurts your feelings, it always hurts before it helps.
Ouch.
It always hurts before it helps. Okay. So just take the hurt and go, I'm going to use this hurt.
And gosh, maybe I need to grow my emotional intelligence a little bit, my emotional quotient.
I think that's really what happened to me.
I think so.
Yeah. Lisa, for years, I think, let's just, talk really
Let's just get really honest here.
Get real vulnerable here for a minute, right? Hey, here we go. But for years, I tried to build a team, and it wasn't the people that we brought on. It was Dennis wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Right? Dennis wasn't emotionally mature enough to be able to navigate some of those things.
Yeah.
So, because what we do always flows out of who we are. And so really becoming a better who will create, higher whats.
Right.
So
right.
at least why don't we go through some tips? You got a
Okay,
couple?
first tip. Don't expect people to trust you if you can't trust them. Ouch.
Yeah.
So establishing trust is not easy. It takes time. And once trust is lost, it takes huge intentionality and time to regain it, to regain that trust. And it is so extremely difficult. So that establishing trust is really vital. And then keeping it. Remember, though, people are human and people do make mistakes. And so when we offer trust to others, we want to offer it knowing I offer trust to you, knowing that you're human, knowing that you're going to make mistakes, and honestly, knowing that you're going to unintentionally break that trust with me, whether you're my spouse or you're my employee. But when I offer trust to you and say, I trust you, it creates a safe space for you and for those around me to reciprocate it with their trust. So if I create a place of safety as a leader, as a manager, as a parent, as a member of a group, and I open up that trust, then I create a place of safety for you to feel like, okay, maybe it's an okay place for me to reciprocate that trust.
Well, at least it's this idea. We have a whole chapter in the 8 Qualities of Drama-Free Teams on this idea of to get ownership, you need to give ownership.
Right.
And many times I know one of the big complaints for leaders is, well, my team just doesn't take ownership. Well, to get that ownership, you have to give some ownership.
Right.
And we'll put a link. If you haven't bought the book or gotten the book, we'll put a link there and you can get it and take a look at that chapter. But it really is, it's like to get ownership, right? To have ownership, to have your team take ownership, you have to give some ownership. And it's the same with trust, right? To get trust, you have to give trust. And it's this reciprocity idea going on. Another tip, Lisa, that I've seen is be realistic.
Right.
Right. And it's almost like all of the drama lives between the gap between unclear expectations and reality. Right. And the bigger the gap, the bigger the drama. Right. The bigger the gap, the lower emotional intelligence there is. And what we're not saying is we're not saying lower expectations, right? Or just have low expectations, but you want to really tell the truth, right? Because all progress starts when you tell the truth and really tell the truth about where it is. Because when you have these unclear expectations, Lisa, it's like living in a fantasy world.
Yeah.
Right. And I know I'm in fantasy when I'm in the shoulds. Oh, it shouldn't be this way. Client should this. My team shouldn't this. Lisa should this. And, oh boy, the kids shouldn't. And we did. Oh, I should. And we just should all over ourselves, right? We should on other people. We should on ourselves. We should on our customers. But really just be realistic. And I tell people all the time, it's like when they kind of get into this fantasy world, I say, you know what? That works in Mars. On Mars, everybody is accountable. Everybody does things on time. Nobody's late on Mars. But you know what? We're on planet Earth today. And this is the reality. And I think when we really get good at just talking about the reality, and sometimes it's this idea of present company, future company. I know I deal with this, right? Is that I have time sometimes living in the present because I'm always thinking about the future and what it should be, or even present self, future self.
Right.
Where I'm thinking about my future self when it's like, really, well, this is the reality. This is really where it's at. And just getting really good because I think, and even like realistic timeframes.
Right.
One thing we tell our clients, especially like in the leadership roundtable, which is really a group of highly ambition,
high performing,
right? Is that I tell them all the time. It's like, I do not doubt any goal you tell me. Anything you want to do, I think you can totally do it. What I do doubt sometimes is the time frame you give it, right? We're going to do this in a year. I'm like, you can do that. A year, up for debate, right? We're going to do this in the next quarter. We're going to do these 5 things. Those 5 things you can totally do. Can you do it in 90 days? I'm not sure about that. And I think really getting good at just, guessing and betting on time frames and really being more realistic on some of these times, Lisa, because I've even dealt with this. Like we have finally republished Drama-Free Teams in Healthcare.
I'm excited about it.
I am super excited, but Lisa, right, I've lived with a frustration thinking that, well, I think when we first said the goal, it's like, hey, we're going to get that done the next quarter. I think that was
no. That was Dennis's goal. The rest of the team knew what a realistic goal was, but we just let you.
Yeah. And the reality is I lived in some frustration. And the only reason I did was because I really had an unrealistic timeline.
Right.
So
Which causes us emotionally to be a roller coaster.
yeah.
And we go up and down when we don't have realistic timeframes.
Yeah.
And when there is this huge gap between expectation and reality,
Yeah.
then we are just going up and down and up and down, and we are for a
I'm
ride
glad that's not me.
because I'm like, okay, we're going to do this now, and then when it doesn't happen, it's down we go, and then we get motivated again. We're going to like, okay, we're going to, and it's
get off the roller coaster.
Right. It's really, it's hard on you as the individual that's setting it, but it's even harder on your team because your team feels like they are disappointing you and they are failing over and over and over.
Yeah.
Or even your family, your kids.
Ooh,
yeah.
Now we're hitting
ouch.
If it hurt, it helps. Remember, if it hurts, it helps.
Not always, but thanks for that tidbit of wisdom, Grandma.
Okay, next.
Be a lifelong learner, right?
You call me a grandma.
No, I just said that phrase was kind of like
got it.
Something my grandma would say.
It's something. Yeah,
it was something your grandma would say for sure.
For sure. That's where I got it from.
I believe it.
Yeah. Okay.
Grandma Sitco. Sweet lady.
We'll put a put a link to the show notes.
Okay,
moving
on. Being a lifelong learner. Yes, cultivate curiosity. Why do you do what you do? Right?
Yep.
What is it that drives you? What is it that drives your coworkers? What is it that drives your spouse? Feed your mind. Feed your curiosity. Feed your intrigue. What intrigues you? When you live an intrigued life, you're happier. You're more fulfilled. So what fuels your passion? When you live with intrigue, it's like there's this light, there's this excitement, there's this adventure. It's like, what could be possible? Now you're not living with the dragon that's chasing you behind. It's like you're living with what could be in front of you. The dragon might be there, but you're living with, hey, where is this adventure taking me?
Yeah, it's almost like your curiosity pulls you forward and your fear kind of pushes you. So are you being pushed or are you being pulled?
Yeah.
Right? And so you have this curiosity. And what I've realized, Lisa, is that curiosity is really unique.
Yeah.
Right? Because what you're curious about is not necessarily always what you're like, oh, I wonder. And I'm like, I don't wonder why at all. In fact, I really don't care.
But what's fascinating is if I'm curious about what drives me, but then I'm also curious about what drives you, then it takes your uniqueness and your idiosyncrasies and makes it an adventure.
That's really good. Yeah, absolutely. So it's unique. So are you being pulled forward by curiosity or are you being pushed by this fear that's kind of driving you? And I'd always rather be pulled along than pushing type of thing. It's a much better use of my energy. Another tip is, Lisa, I was thinking about it, be prepared to leave the comfort zone.
Ouch.
Yeah, because what I've realized is that most of my challenges are not necessarily logical in nature. They're all emotional in nature. Right. And I think the problem sometimes is we get a lot of content, we get a lot of podcasts, and it's all about, hey, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? Right. It's all these logical how-tos. But I've said this before in a lot of the workshops is that if how-tos were enough, we'd all be skinny, we'd all be rich, and we'd all be happy.
Right.
Right. I mean, at least I don't need another diet book. I don't need more logic on how to lose weight. It's something emotional, right? It's like, I know not to eat the ice cream, but what's the problem? I want the ice cream, right? And I know logically, 3 bowls of ice cream at night is too much, right? Just 2 bowls are okay, but 3 bowls, just way too much ice cream, right? So if I just stay with 2, it's going to be okay. No, but, and so those are all discomforts.
Right.
And so I think sometimes even personally to go up to another level, there's a discomfort you have to feel. And many times it's more of an emotional discomfort than it is a logical discomfort, right? And I think I've discovered I have to use courage to really create the comfort. I'm going to have to go through this period of discomfort or using courage to go create a comfortable place. And I think comfort's okay. I just don't think you camp there. It's like enjoy it, feel the win, take some time, and then to go to the next level, you got to use some more courage. And so I think things like challenges, I think you have to challenge safety, right? Sometimes, within reason, right? It's like, hey, this doesn't quite feel safe, but I'm going to step into it. You have to challenge predictability.
Right.
Right. It's like, hey, I'm doing the same thing. Like, what am I doing predictably? Because what I'm getting is based on what I'm doing.
And that really ties along with being a lifelong learner.
Yeah. And I think you have to,
As you're learning, you're leaving your comfort zone.
it really is. Yeah. And so,
And as you're leaving your comfort zone, then you're learning and you're becoming more aware.
yeah, and almost challenging fear, challenging the familiar, and really, and what's interesting, Lisa, only you know if you're in a place of courage. Only you know you're challenging yourself because it's sort of your story on the inside.
Yeah.
So I think really being prepared to leave comfort zone and, step to that next level.
That's good.
Yeah.
I love it. So another tip for, just increasing your emotional intelligence and also increasing the performance, the capability, the trust in your team is try to be approachable. Right? Remain accessible, remain approachable, gain the perspective of other people.
Yeah.
When something goes wrong, you can really look at the situation and you can look at it from the other person's point of view. So this didn't go well. We, had a disagreement, and instead of just focusing on me, kind of closing up, remaining open, remaining approachable, looking at what happened from, okay, so what was Dennis like experiencing? What was he thinking? What was his perspective? What was his knowledge? Because when it goes wrong and we look at it from another person's point of view, it helps us prevent emotions from escalating, and it keeps us in our prefrontal cortex, which helps us look at things objectively so we can solve the issue rather than react to the tension and the emotion that's going on.
Yeah, and it kind of goes along with this other tip on this idea of wearing somebody else's shoes.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, sometimes we talk about being curious about other people's experiences.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think being approachable is also like asking open-ended questions that really encourages other people to share their thoughts and feelings.
Right.
And Lisa, what I've discovered is that I love asking questions that I have no idea what the answer is going to be.
You love that.
I do.
I prefer to know kind of what the answer is coming.
Well,
but that's just how we're different.
Well, and I know every lawyer would probably contradict this, right? Every attorney would contradict this, right? Because the whole point of, being in, but really when you think about it, it can create an adversarial relationship. If I already know the answer, and especially if I think like if you ask me a question, I think you're looking for a certain answer, it sort of shuts down some of that collaboration. So really kind of like, asking open-ended questions that like, I don't know what they're going to say, but I'm going to learn. And I think it just really helps you, be approachable. And then really try to imagine the emotions that other people would feel in that situation, right? Instead of saying like, hey, you shouldn't be hurt. Hey, you shouldn't be mad. But I think, okay, well, if that happened to me, or I think, well, mad's reasonable.
Right.
Right. And at least I've even seen, and I was talking to a particular client who was really frustrated with some team members. And I said, I think it's reasonable for you to feel frustrated. I said, I think, if, they did this and that's a reasonable response. It almost like it helps validate people. And I think just like you said, seeing the world from other people's point of view, because, many times we just create things just for us. Like we've even been in the habit of sometimes bad habit of creating a product that really is just for me instead of stepping back and going, well, how would it work for that person?
Right.
And really kind of getting that feedback. So I think wearing, somebody else's shoes kind of goes right along with, being approachable.
Right. And then another one is listening.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think, listening is really kind of the epicenter of empathy.
Yeah.
And so it allows people to like kind of talk without like interrupting, kind of takes care of those preconceptions, skepticism, and it really kind of allows you to put your own issues on pause to kind of absorb the situation. Because, when I'm always thinking, okay, I got to say, I let her finish because I got this, and really,
and I can totally feel that when you are wanting to jump in.
Yeah.
I can totally feel it. And honestly, it shuts me down. And so listening really is a partner with being approachable.
Well, and it's such an amazing skill to really say, and you can feel it, right? Because people feel you before they hear you. Mm-hmm. And you can feel if somebody's listening to you and they're completely engaged. And I think a lot of that is, at least we talked about this last podcast, is this difference between here and there.
Right.
Right. If I'm always thinking about there and I got my response, I'm not really here.
Yeah.
And you can feel that. And so really being here it really is almost like it's an amazing gift, right? To give somebody your attention. because you can feel when people don't give you your attention.
Yeah.
And so giving people your attention is a tremendous gift that you can give people.
Absolutely. And then avoiding negativity.
Hmm.
Avoiding negativity. So people with high emotional intelligence, people with a high EQ, they realize that negative thoughts, they're just information. They're simply thoughts,
Yep.
and they're nothing more. A lot of times people will have negative thoughts, and those negative thoughts are just dogging them and dogging them and dogging them. But it's stepping back and being like, okay, hey, this thought, it was really, really negative, and honestly, it is just a thought.
Well, it goes back to, it's like you are not your thoughts. Almost like a thought is just something that sort of happens through you.
Right. And we talk about this in Emotionally Intelligent.
Yeah.
We really talk about the negative thoughts and
that harsh inner critic, how to overcome it.
Right,
Yep.
right. And the more likely we are to stay out of the spiral of anxiousness when we realize this negative thought, it's just a thought. It just happens to be negative this time. And so we kind of, I don't know, just really take the emotion out of it and more treat it kind of as a detail. Hey, this is a thought. Oh, this happened to be a negative one. This happens to be a positive one. But when we're just thinking about those thoughts more objectively, it helps us not spiral down the black hole of anxiety and anxious thoughts. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but one anxious thought feeds to another.
It really does.
And it's one and then the next and the next. And it is literally like this slip and slide straight down into the black hole of anxiety and anxious thoughts. But instead, when we recognize this thought, okay, was a negative thought and true or not true, we can stay objective and we can cut off that stream of thoughts that cause us to go into the downturn.
Well, and I think that's sort of the key. It kind of goes right along with this, avoid being overly critical is sort of another tip. And Lisa, what I've seen is that people that are harsh with themselves, have a harsh inner critic, they tend to be harsh with other people.
Right.
And so this really stepping back and just being, clear with you and really suspending judgment on yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because I tend to be very judgy on other people when I'm judging myself super harshly. And so I think paying attention to when and why you feel the urge to criticize, right? Because some of us by nature, we have this habit of criticizing. So when it kind of wants to come out, go, okay, where's this coming from? And a lot of times, Lisa, it could be coming from insecurity. I know for me, I become very critical when I feel a little insecure in my leadership and in my decisions and, or it can come from stressors.
Right.
And it's the power of really taking off-stage time, really taking free time that we teach, especially people in the roundtable. It's one thing that we really work hard with people because tired eyes don't see well. And so when I'm stressed and I'm tired, I will tend to be overly critical. It's almost like, Lisa, the tireder I become, the dumber our team is.
Right.
Right. The dumber our clients are. And it's not that they're dumb. It's just that it's something inside of Dennis. And I have to step back and go, okay, I think I just need a break. I need to take a break. I need to step back so that I can show up with my best self. And so I think one thing that I've really worked on is not using so many I statements or using more I statements instead of you. It's like, hey, you never helped me with the chores or you need to do this. Or it's like, hey, I wish we could work together on the chores. You're brilliant at this, at not using a lot of you, but using a lot of I statements that I've seen. And so I've kind of learned it from you, but really like taking this approach of using I statements, like really owning it. It's like, hey, I wish this, or hey, I hope that this would, instead of going, why don't you ever, right? And then when we're overly critical, right, we use very extreme language, right? Never, always.
Really, truly, is it really, truly never? And is it really, truly always?
Right. And so I always know I'm being overly critical whenever I'm using very extreme language. And the first person I've got to stop using extreme language with is me.
Absolutely.
Right. Because really it feeds insecurity. And really there's a sense of I don't have certainty on the inside of myself. And so really I'm using these harsh statements to try to get control. So listen, when people are using harsh statements, that's typically is what's happening. Extreme language, they're trying to get control over something on the inside. And so I've sort of learned to let people
recognize they're probably dealing with a harsh inner critic.
Yeah,
and then you can kind of have compassion for them. It's like, hey, I recognize they're probably dealing with a harsh inner critic. They're probably being really hard on themselves. And that's why they're coming across hard. But you know what? I'm secure in who I am, and it's not about me, it's about them. Right. They're showing up really tough.
Well, it's fascinating because we say, hey, you never do this. And you go, never, really? And now we're talking, right? And now I'm trying to prove that yes, never, right? And the fact that you said it, I already know that, maybe 90% of the time, but there's always that 10%, right? And now we're not even dealing with the issue.
Right.
Instead of just almost like allowing people just like sort of to have that and go, wow, you're telling me about you. You're not, right? There's something else going on.
But you don't like say that, because then that can come across condescending. So don't.
Right. I'm talking the dialogue in your head, right?
Internal dialogue.
Right.
Here.
We're talking about a friend, right? We know a guy. Okay.
But along those lines, this is really fascinating. And this is something that you and I dealt with for years, is you had an extremely strong, harsh inner critic. And then me by nature, by my natural giftings and talents, whether you're talking DISC or Myers-Briggs or Enneagram or Working Genius, I have a high level of discernment. I can take something and I can tweak it and I can make it better. It's just, and I might not know anything about it. It's just,
you are brilliant at that.
I can see something and I'm like, gosh, if this would only, or I also can see areas maybe that things aren't going well.
Yeah.
Now I might not always have the answer, but I can pick out the problem.
Yeah.
And so along those lines, say in our relationship, so if you have a relationship, whether it's a friend, a coworker, a boss that has a very, very harsh inner critic, and you as an individual have high discernment, high refinement, that is kind of a recipe for disaster, because my refinement, I'd say, hey, if we did this and this, it would go better. It would be different.
Yeah.
Out of refining or discerning. And then you, as your harsh inner critic, would turn around and say, internally, it would be like, they're coming down on me. They're criticizing me.
I would always take it personal.
Taking it personally, they're criticizing me. You would think Lisa's criticizing me. She's telling me I'm not doing it right. Da da da. Just all of the harsh inner critic statements. When in reality, it was Lisa as the refiner is saying we could improve in this way, and then Dennis as the harsh inner critic was saying. She's saying that as a personal attack against me. Well, and so when you began to change your harsh inner critic to having more compassion and accepting that maybe when I was saying things, it wasn't about you. It was about the
situation, circumstance.
It was about the bookshelf, or it was about, it had nothing to do with Dennis put the bookshelf in the wrong place. It just was an inanimate object. It was an inanimate thing.
Yeah.
And then that completely changed the tension in our relationship.
Well, and I think, and I feel like we're like going down a rabbit hole that we could do like another 10 podcasts, but really I think what was happening is that, when you have a wound, like a wound of abandonment, right, especially with
those unmet needs, right?
Those unmet needs, right? This wound of abandonment, which so many people have, is that when people are overly critical, it fuels that wound, and then everything becomes about that wound. And really, this is where it's like the best way to help people is for you to get healthy yourself. Mm-hmm. And so it's part of the reason why we created Emotionally Intelligent, because it's a communication system that helps you first get healthy with you and communicate with yourself correctly before you turn around and try to communicate with team members.
It's not about fixing the other person. It's about like setting yourself up into a healthy spot.
Yeah.
Because we have unhealthy people all around us, but we can still work together. Absolutely. There are aspects between you and I. There are aspects of myself that, still are unhealthy in you, but
no, not at all in me.
Not,
right,
you're
right. I don't, right.
You have arrived. You have arrived.
Yeah.
But that's absolutely true.
Right.
It's just having strategies and systems and being able to kind of deal with the internal crap is just makes the communication, the relationship, whether you're a manager, a leader, a boss, so much better. And what's fascinating is, so we work with a lot of high-performing individuals. Mm-hmm. They are,
ambitious.
They are so ambitious, and these guys,
big dreams, big visions,
and they're CEOs, they're owners of companies. They're just really high level, high performing. That's what our roundtable is. It's just high performing individuals in the workforce, and typically they all have harsh inner critics. And the benefit of the harsh inner critic is that's part of what has driven them to success, because they're dogging themselves.
It's true.
But it's also what destroys them. And it's what destroys their team. And
Right.
so some of the most effective, high-performing individuals that we work with, they recognize, yes, I've got this passion, I've got this drive, but I have learned to not turn it so negatively. I've learned that it's not about someone coming down on me.
Yeah, and we'll have to do a podcast on this because it really actually becomes fuel to do even more. A lot of times people say,
Yes.
well, that's how I got these goals because I'm, so harsh. And so it's just, no, it's not true. It's that you just don't really know any other way. But if you could discover this other way, results skyrocket. But,
it's part of what has
Yeah.
contributed to your success. It's
Yeah.
what has contributed to our success,
Yep.
but it's not going to be what contributes to our future success. It's going to be the detriment.
Yeah. And the last tip we wanted to give?
Avoid giving into peer pressure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So back to what Grandma says.
All right.
If everyone jumped off the bridge, would you jump off too? I mean,
Heck yeah. Let's jump. We're jumping.
it's that saying that your parents or your grandparents or your great-grandparents, depending on your age, would have used, when you say, but everybody's doing it, but everybody's wearing it, but everybody is whatever. It's like, don't feel pressured to do what other people are doing.
Yeah.
Cultivate your own individuality. That's what makes you special. And that's what people pay for. That's what your managers, your bosses, they pay for your individuality.
Yeah.
That's why we got married. You say it so often. It's like, you didn't marry me because I was like all of the other girls.
Right. Something different.
You married me because of my uniqueness.
Yeah.
And so when we do the things that we love, when we do the things that we're passionate about, it helps us find our spark.
Mhm.
And when we find our spark,
Yeah.
that's what our employers pay for. That's what our kids desire to see in us. That's what our parents, our family, the organizations that we're with, that's what is your uniqueness that you bring into the situation.
Yeah. And I think, Lisa, we were born an original, but we die a copy. Many people die a copy, right? You're born original, but a lot of times we die a copy. And I just want to disclose that Dan Sullivan gave me a question one time, and he asked, what's the one single focus and activity that could keep you fascinated and motivated for the rest of your life? It's a big question, right? Because I got a lot of, but if you can find that one single focus, that one activity.
If you could even find 5 of them.
Right.
If you could narrow it down to 5, I think that'd be a big deal.
Yeah, but almost like, hey, what fascinates you? What motivates you? Only you know those answers, right? Only you know that. And so really developing your uniqueness, right? Because you were born an original, so do not die a copy. And I think we'll finish with that right there. Any last thoughts or any big takeaways from today?
I think that our lives changed so much when we really grasped a hold of this, and just the power of a high emotional quotient, high emotional intelligence, that it wasn't all out here, that I had full control over what was going on, regardless of what happened around me.
I think the thing that hit me, Lisa, is I feel like in some areas of my life, I've kind of come to a comfort zone. And I think it's time to step out and use a little bit of courage, because I've realized that I don't enjoy it. Yeah. I really don't. But I think there's some areas that, hey, I got to step out and be a little uncomfortable so that I can take the next leap in my own personal development.
Wow, I can't wait for this conversation.
I know it's going to be fun. So listen, we're going to put a link to the podcast notes and for you to get a copy of the communication system, Emotionally Intelligent. So it's there as a resource for you. And I think our work is done here.
Yeah.
So we'll see you next time on the Drama Free Living Podcast.